All right, everyone, it's time to take a dump on the National Rifle Association, because after years of their decline, at some point something needs to be said with regards to this, and some people have already formed other groups that are actually pro-Second Amendment. But I was thinking, like, the other day the NRA had a post there, and they were talking about how they were going to not do their national, like, shooting I guess they have a thing that they set up each year where they have target shooting or something, and they decided because of COVID they're not going to do that. And I was thinking to myself, isn't that just a sign of the NRA totally cucking, totally selling out? Like, for years now, the NRA has never actually stood for an expansion of gun rights. The only group that's expanded gun rights over the last 2 decades is SCOTUS, the Supreme Court of all groups, with Heller versus D.C., McDonald versus Chicago. You've got reciprocal carry situations. You have limitations on local gun control. Some of the more draconian laws with regards to firearms have been ripped apart by the Supreme Court. By the way, they would do that more, except they keep refusing to take up the cases. I think they're hoping that Joe Biden will win so he can stack the court with a bunch of far leftists so that they can justify basically nullifying the Second Amendment or some dumb shit like that. Which, by the way, is another great reason to vote for Trump, because you got 2 very old people in the Supreme Court that could keel over at any time. The idea of going full accelerationism right now, I think, would be a very, very bad idea for many people, not least of all me. Partially tax-related, of course. But the NRA, I was thinking, have they done anything to expand gun rights? Because they sit there and they complain. They say, well, this new law that's been proposed would jeopardize the Second Amendment. It would violate the Second Amendment. Then it gets passed, and like after a little complaining, you never hear anything about it again. And after a few years, they never talk about it again. They just accept it as codified. Well, yeah, as long as they don't pass more gun control. Well, that stubbornness, that unwillingness to actually fight for your beliefs is why we have so much unconstitutional shit in this country. Not just about guns, about violations of free speech, violations of the Fourth Amendment right to privacy. The government spies on everyone all the time. It all violates the Fourth Amendment, every single bit of it. The existence of FISA courts violates the right to a speedy, fair public trial. It violates the rights of the accused. It violates the rights of the accused to cross-examine and provide exculpatory evidence. It violates the Fourth Amendment through its data gathering. It fundamentally violates the First Amendment. We've had no-fly lists and lists of people that are accused of being potentially extremists, so they can't buy a gun. It's blatantly unconstitutional. The no-fly list is unconstitutional. The NSA data gathering, wiretapping. We have so many unconstitutional things that happen in the country, and the groups that try to fight it, anytime they lose, they just clam up and they stop talking about that issue. And then they take the line in the sand that they drew that you just crossed, and then they just move it an inch. And they say, well, okay, just don't cross this next line. And this happens over and over. By the way, the NRA in acting like this is exactly like BLM. Let me explain. The NRA initially was groups of people that actually genuinely cared about making sure that people had the right to keep and bear arms, had the right to all of their various fun weapons and so forth. It was built in a meritocratic sense by people who cared about the issue. That age has long gone. Now the NRA is run by people who enjoy a fat paycheck. The NRA now exists just to collect money. This happens with BLM too. BLM's initial, Occupy oddly enough, BLM is formed by people initially. The initial wave of it is not Marxist. The initial wave of it is stop killing us. They very quickly got co-opted by corrupt individuals who said, wow, this is a great organization. I've got skills. You should make me grand secretary. Oh, but yeah, by the way, I just ignore the Marxist manifesto under my pillow that I read every night. It got taken over by people who just wanted a lot of money. And now they're all millionaires. The NRA is the same way. The leadership, the organization, doesn't really care about rifles. In fact, if there were no meaningful gun control, they wouldn't exist as a group now, would they? They'd start losing members. You win too much. The problem with activism is if you win too much, you destroy yourself. That's why activism is usually craftivism. It's usually a bunch of bullshit. If a new activistic group springs up in order to fight some challenging problem that's current, if it wins, great. It achieved its goal, it disappears. If it doesn't win, it tries to stay around because now it has something to perpetually bitch about. The NRA has plenty of things that it bitches about, but other than tweeting, what the fuck do they do? Essentially, we're going to get to the point, like in 20, I was joking about this the other night, like the year is 2040, the Supreme Court just ruled that you don't have the right to own black powder revolvers, only flintlock weapons from the 16th century. The NRA is mildly concerned and wrote a letter condemning the move. And then 10 years later, it's like, okay, yeah, they took away your flintlock rifles, but we can still have BB guns. And 10 years later, it's like, oh, we think that the limitation on BB gun magazine size is a little bit draconian, but we celebrate those scary black powder weapons having gone away. Praise Stalin, basically. And that's what the NRA's done. And BLM, operate in the same manner. You're never going to actually get reform out of these groups. If they reform things too much, they lose money. But a lot of the people that joined the NRA joined it not because they're like, sporting enthusiasts or something like that, or super fans of guns. They're just worried about more gun control. Well, if that gun control goes away, some of these people say, well, there's no reason for me to pay them money every month. Why should I renew my yearly membership? There's no gun control. I own a Tommy gun now. They disappear because there'd be no social stress to create that activistic front. That's the problem with activism. It's the problem with getting fucking anything accomplished. This is why we need a meritocratic Enlightenment-style society of classically liberal, educated individuals who just simply know how to pragmatically run things. Instead, we've got this hodgepodge of corporate bureaucrats and slimy fucking lawyers and crooked businessmen running the country into the ground. And then you get these firms that claim to speak to a broader social issue and they don't do anything. NFA's been around for a long time. The NRA never challenges it. When's the last time the NRA suggested that we should have legislation that allows us to go back to the pre-NFA era where you could mail order fully automatic weapons? Society wasn't collapsing. It wasn't overrun by crime. Other than the G-men having to go after Bonnie and Clyde, there was no problem. Look, the only reason that wave of gun control existed, the first wave of gun control was just Jim Crow. The next wave of gun control was just foisted on the public because what happened is that Metro police forces had simple revolver, 38 revolvers and stuff like that. Bonnie and Clyde could zip through town with their armored car and their Tommy gun, kill a bunch of cops on the way through, and even if they fucking chased these people, they got gunned down on the way. As long as the other person had enough drums, there was no problem. And they're not going to hit anything. Running down the road at 50 miles an hour trying to fire at you with a old single-action revolver is not going to work as well as if you're in a defensive armored position with a Tommy gun. It's just the way that it works. So they decided to eliminate the Tommy gun instead of just giving more weapons to police and evening things out, or encouraging private citizens to help out through vigilantism. Oh my God, we can't do that. Quick, establish the FBI. Send the G-men after them. We need gun control. Bad. Because a handful of people got shot and because people were bootlegging and shit like that. That's the reason for that. Well, the moonshining era is over. The era of that kind of gangland crime has devolved into an era where now the criminals, by and large, they just use handguns. They're not toting Tommy guns around. It's not because they can't obtain automatic weapons. Bull fucking shit. You think the cartels don't have access to these things? Why do you think they never use them, for the most part, and just kill each other with a single shot from a Glock? Because it's more easily concealed. It's just easier to do business that way. That era's long gone bye-bye because the technology changed. The manner of policing changed. The nature of crime changed. You don't need to fucking run down the road with kegs of liquor and shit like that anymore. No, they just they tunnel under a border with a bunch of heroin or something. Totally different. So the NRA have sold out. They no longer really defend the Second Amendment. They don't care about the Second Amendment. They only care about maintaining the already eroded gun rights that exist. But each time they're eroded a little bit further, the NRA stomps its feet a little bit, takes a step back, and draws another line in the sand. They never push back. They never think, well, we've got all these millions of members. Why don't we actually do something meaningful? Because if they get too successful, and by the way, if they get too rowdy, they get regulated. That's the other problem. If the NRA called upon people to actually defend statues and refuse to hand in their magazines and stuff, if they called for civil disobedience, they'd get reamed. The corporate media would declare them extremists, terrorist enablers. That's bad for business. It might be totally, on principle, they should fight that battle because they know that it's wrong, but they don't want to lose the fucking money. They're afraid that the old people that comprise the NRA will look askance to being part of an organization that CNN just told them is extremist. That's what it ultimately boils down to, wanting that sweet boomer retiree cash. That's about all. Peace out.